Energy Transition Now with David Linden.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to Energy Transition Now, and I'm your host, David Linden, the head of Energy Transition for the Westwood Global Energy Group. Following a short summer break, we continue today with our CCUS mini-series, shifting our focus primarily from the transport and storage side of things to the capture part of the value chain. We have here with us today Mike Maudsely, who is the CEO of Enfinium, a leading UK energy from waste operator that is taking decarbonisation and carbon capture seriously. Mike, welcome to Energy Transition Now.
Thank you, David. Lovely to be here today.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking the time, I guess during a very busy summer period. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing a little bit about enfinium. As is always the case with Energy Transition Now, we do have quite a broad range of listeners, and it helps to sometimes start off with just covering some of the basics first, Mike. And as I mentioned in my intro there, you're the CEO of an energy from waste operator. Could you maybe just give us a bit of a 101 or a bit of an introduction, exactly what is energy from waste and how does it work?
Sure, no problem. Energy from waste, it's a hidden gem in my view. I did 30 years in the power industry, and energy from waste was not really a big thing because you don't create a lot of energy, and that's the number one point. So why is that a point? The point is that we're a waste company, and that's what we need to do. Our role and responsibility in society is to manage unrecyclable waste which has already gone through its recycling process and would be going to landfill. And we take that waste and we use that and we generate electricity with that from the heat process. So you combust the waste as you would combust other fuels, but it's our homegrown non-recyclable waste, and we then generate the steam. It turns the steam turbine and that generates the electricity. And we also create heat from that, so we can distribute heat out as well as electricity. So we create energy, but our core job is to manage millions of tons of unrecycled waste in this country.
Interesting, fabulous. And if I was to ask maybe a brief follow-up question to that, does that mean energy from waste business model therefore is limited to the amount of unrecycled waste that's produced in a country, essentially? So, you know, if a country becomes more circular, less waste intensive, etc., therefore it means that business model means there's a smaller pie for you to take part in.
Yeah, I think we need to be clear on that. The society, as society, we shouldn't create waste in the first place. And Enfinium is not out there to say create waste, send it our way. The second part of that is that we must reuse, recycle, repurpose all the waste that we can. But in reality, waste will be created, and we have to do something with that waste. An energy from waste plant is the best way to manage the waste. The other opportunity, or other option rather than opportunity, is to put it into landfill. Landfill is not a good place for waste because the way that it would degrade the waste in the land actually can create methane, or will create methane. That methane is worse to the atmosphere than CO2, carbon dioxide, when it's combusted. So we're already decarbonising the waste sector by saying, don't put it into landfill, not good. Energy from waste is the place to go. We will manage the waste well, and then we will obviously create energy from that. And the other part is don't export it abroad because it's a valuable commodity that we can use. And then just adding to that point of, is it a diminishing market? There's about 60 million tons of non-recyclable waste which is managed at the moment through energy from waste plants in the UK. Enfinium, we manage about 2 million tons of that. So we are quite a significant proportion, and 2 million tons of waste will actually generate enough electricity, enough energy for about 500,000 homes. So even though I say we're small compared to gas-fired power stations or large power stations, but we still do a very good job there. And we do believe that after we've recycled everything, after the circular economy has done the best it can in recycling waste. DEFRA has defined that probably by about 2040, there'll still be about 17 million tons of non-recyclable waste out there that has to be managed well. So that's the point, is energy from waste plants are there to manage waste, unrecyclable waste, as best we can.
Perfect. Okay. And DEFRA, for anyone who's a non-UK listener, essentially looks after its environmental agency, right? And those sorts of things.
That's right.
Yes. Perfect. Okay. No, thank you. And thank you for that. And I think it's just helpful for people to understand who don't look at waste, and particularly as their day job. This is obviously an energy podcast, and so people focus typically on the energy equation, and it's important to know. And thank you for clarifying that. And you started talking a bit about enfinium itself there. Can you maybe just clarify a little bit around, where you are based, what your facilities are doing? Are you 100% UK, for example? Just a bit more context and colour for the listeners. That'd be great.
So we are just a UK business. We're owned by a 100% infrastructure fund called Igneo Infrastructure Partners, and they're a long-term investor, which is good for us. That means we can think about the long term. We have 4 operational assets, very large assets. We have one in North Wales, where we manage all the non-recyclable waste across the whole of the counties of North Wales. We have one in Kent, where we use the waste from the Kent area and actually create heat to produce for a paper mill next door to us, or cardboard manufacturer next door to us, called DS Smith. And that heat actually, in the positive sense, it diverts gas that would have been burnt at that paper mill. And we use our non-recyclable waste and create the heat for them. They create cardboard for Amazon, for instance. So that's a good part of the circular economy. And then we have 2 very large plants in Ferrybridge. That is the largest energy from waste site in the UK. So we have 4 state-of-the-art technology plants, very, very modern technologies, very clean emission technologies, do exactly what it says on the tin. And we're building 2 new ones. We're building a new one which should come online next year in Leeds, called Skelton Grange, and one which should come online in early 26 in Birmingham, in Sandwell, in Birmingham. So right at the edge of the M5 there. We will have 6 plants by then, and we will be processing about 3 million tons of non-recyclable waste by 2026. We don't collect waste. That's another important part. We do just manage the waste. So the waste comes from local authorities. It would come from big companies that collect the waste that we might see out there on the streets. Veolia would be one, Suez, Biffers. They're all our suppliers of waste. So they've already recycled this waste. It's gone through processes, and then it comes to us. Where that's a final step, where it's a bit like wringing the cloth out. Well, so let's get some more out of this, and that's what we do.
Fabulous. Okay, and the locations you've described where you have that, is that essentially because that's the best place for your suppliers? Let's say your Biffers of the world, that's where they're located, so they can go to you. Is that where the industries are such located, and that makes the most sense to be located there?
Yes, the number one thing is that you need to be located close to the supply of the waste, and generally it doesn't travel too well. It costs money to travel, and it actually pollutes the atmosphere by traveling. That doesn't mean to say it doesn't travel. What there are in the UK, there's about 50 plus energy from waste plants, and they're scattered around the UK, and they take local waste where you can, and then obviously trying to divert what was going to landfill into these plants. So it needs to be close to a good road network, and ideally we can take some in by rail at Ferrybridge as well.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Okay, no, one of the questions just I had in my head for when we start to talk about the decarbonisation side of things around location and where you are and what that means. But let's talk about that decarbonisation side of things. So you've got those 4 operational plants, 2 new ones you're constructing, etc. So you have 6 plants in total. What's your kind of decarbonisation vision from that? How are you thinking about the energy transition for these plants?
Well, the first part I did mention is that we're already decarbonising, because we are diverting waste from landfill to energy from waste plants. So we are already part of a decarbonisation. This is not new for us. That's the point, is that we're here in the sector decarbonising. I guess it would be similar to maybe coal-fired power stations, gas-fired power stations that replace coal-fired power stations. We have decarbonised landfill, or we are doing, and so that's the first part of the process. We are creating energy. That energy is displacing fossil fuel energy, which is decarbonising energy out there. So when we put power onto the grid, we're decarbonising that as well. And then we also, as I said, with the heat, is we're looking for heat distribution around the local businesses that are around us, and trying to help them decarbonise. So the second part of the step is decarbonise others with our energy. That's a massive opportunity, and it creates the circular economy. It's the right thing to do. Then the final North Star, and I think it's the golden goose here that gives two with one in the process, because if we put carbon capture on our plants, we capture all the CO2 that we're emitting, and that's an important part. We capture the CO2. Now the waste, and people won't know this, but waste is two halves. It's biogenic and it's fossil. So the fossil part is plastics that were thrown away that can't be recycled, and the biogenics are things like, bits of cardboard, paper, food that's in there. It's all mixed together, so we can't split it between us. But when it combusts, it is two different CO2s. It's got the historic CO2, and it's got the modern CO2. So the biogenic CO2, if we capture everything, then the biogenic CO2 is part of a natural evolution of CO2 in our environment. So if we were emitting that now, as we are, it doesn't add any more to the atmosphere. So biogenic CO2 doesn't add any more to the atmosphere than what it would do. But if we capture that CO2, we remove CO2 from the atmosphere. So this is why I call it the golden goose. It's the story that's not being told yet and not being seen. It's basically stopping fossil emissions going up into the atmosphere, but also removing carbon from the atmosphere in the same process. So we will move from an energy from waste business to a decarbonisation business, and that will ultimately be a carbon removals business. And enfinium's decarbonisation plan would be to put carbon capture across all our sites. And we've committed at the moment, we've got four operational sites that we have now, and we said, well, we will commit £1.7 billion of capital to do that. Obviously, we need a commercial framework to underpin it, but the banks out there are there to support us. The technology's there to do it. We need infrastructure around that to be able to transport. But we are at the start of this process. This is our vision. We aim by the mid-2030s to have carbon capture on our 4 operational sites and be creating negative emissions carbon removals.
Wow. Okay. All right. There's a lot going on there, Mike. So
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got several different levers which are essentially, call it, defining you as a helping with the decarbonisation journey, and then eventually becoming what you're saying is the vision of the company, essentially, to be a decarbonisation business as a whole. So I think that's very interesting, very exciting. And I think the carbon removal side of things is particularly interesting. Just so we can understand the biogenic versus fossil side of things. I mean, it's extremely difficult because I'm assuming it depends on the waste that you get. But what's the kind of typical split that we're talking about here in that vision? So is 80% of it fossil and there's a little bit of negative emissions you can pull out because of biogenic, or is it a 50-50 split? And so you've got quite a significant portion of the typical waste that you get that you can create negative emissions from.
I think you landed it the second time. At the moment, it is 50-50.
Okay.
And the more recycling we do, so the positive part here is the more recycling society does, the more plastics are removed, and the higher the percentage the biogenic or that the fossil goes down, and therefore the biogenic goes up in proportion. So at the moment, 50-50. Some areas slightly higher than others, and I think the practicalities to go forward in time, as there's something called the emissions trading scheme, the carbon tax, which will be coming in on the waste sector from 2028. That is an important stage in the waste sector. We're not taxed by this ETS process in the sector yet. So that's coming in. So that means it will be a tax on people's plastic going in their bins, in a sense, because it has to be managed and removed, not put into the atmosphere. So that should change behavior. And that behavior hopefully will change the split from 50-50 to 60-40. And so we'll be removing more biogenic content, which is removing more or creating more carbon removals.
Fascinating. Okay, so that's adding to the negative emissions side of things. In terms of then the progress that you've made, so I want to talk about progress, and I want to talk about some of the challenges afterwards as well to sort of achieve that vision. But just in terms of progress, so you said that you're looking to spend is it 1.7 billion in the space?
1.7. Yeah.
Yeah. And hoping to have by the mid 2030s for those operational sites, call it retrofitted or whatever you want to call it, with carbon capture technology. Can I then rightly sort of say that at the moment it's still a plan and you'd like to do it, but it's a conversation you're having, but this is still the vision that you're keen to do? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's very clear. It's a plan, but it's a plan we've published the plan, so it's not something that Mike woke up in the morning and thought, I've got a good idea, I'm going to say this out there.
No, you should go on your website. Actually, it's a very well articulated plan, to be fair. So.
we published our net zero transition plan earlier in the year. We had this plan developed and created by an independent, by Arup. We wanted to make sure that it's real. Can we do this? Is it possible? How would we do that? And how would we try? So this is not like build 4 in one go and let's trip up over everything. We've got a clear process of how we could transition our business in a construction activity to do this. The other part of enfinium, as I said, we're building 2 new assets at the moment, which is £1 billion of investment. So we're building 2 assets, £500 million each in Leeds and in Birmingham. So we have the skills and the competence to develop these new systems, retrofit, add more to what we've got. Then so there's one on a plan, and then the other part is can we do it? So have we got the space? That's one thing. And we've done a master plan for every site, including the 2 newer sites. Have we got the space? Because a carbon capture, you can't just run away and say, yeah, let's build it, and you just plug it into something. It will take up about 1/3 of your land again. So from a space perspective, you've got to really respect when we're talking carbon capture, people have to understand, companies have to understand what it really means. It's multi-million, billions of pounds of capital investment. It needs a lot of space. You need to understand how it works. You need to also understand the energy consumption, because this is the other part of it. You can't run away and just build these everywhere. It consumes a lot of energy. So when we're an energy from waste business, it will take, and it doesn't matter whether it's our plant or a CCGT plant, it will consume 1/3 of your energy in doing so.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Now, these things are not discussed. And this is the important thing for energy from waste. We're not here to create energy. We're here to manage the waste. The energy is a byproduct, so we can use it in any way we want, which is positive. That means we can use it towards carbon capture, and it doesn't deflect from our primary role of managing the waste. So, yeah, we've got a clear plan. We've got a footprint of how it would work. Maybe if I can take through a few steps of what we are doing, would that help as well?
Yeah.
So on one side, we need to commercialize this. We need how does this really work? How do you can't just build it, you've got to plumb it into a system. So the government has set a process up where it's identified 2 clusters, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. And they're looking, and it's called Track 1. It's run by DESNZ, which is the Department of Energy, Energy Security and Net Zero.
That's it.
And they are asking for bidders to say, well, we want to build carbon capture, and they want to help develop the whole infrastructure to do that. And that is the principle of what DESNZ are trying to do. Now, what it means is there's a lot of businesses out there bidding, and not everybody's going to be a winner. But it doesn't matter whether you're a winner or not at this point. The government needs to create the infrastructure out there. So we're working with DESNZ. We're actually in a bidding process right now, and we've bid our Parc Adfer plant in North Wales. So this is a smaller plant, which is good. Small is good because small means that you can scale up. You can scale up from what's already out there in the world quite quickly. We can buy modular technology and we could build it fast, and it's already proven. So I believe that Parc Adfer is a 200,000 ton per annum waste facility. 1 ton of waste creates 1 ton of CO2, so it will capture 200,000 tons. Round numbers, these are 200,000 tons of CO2, which is good. It's a small step in a scale, which is easy, and we can connect it to the HyNet system, which ENI that you interviewed a few weeks ago. They are building that CO2 pipeline network. So we're bidding into that. We have pre-qualified, but we're not at any advanced stage in that. We're looking at with 2 or 3 suppliers technically how it would fit on the site, yes, and how it would work, yes. And we've also put planning permission in for consenting to build carbon capture at Ferrybridge, which is the largest site in the UK, on both of those plants. So we've put that planning in as well, and that's part of a process. And I'm proud to say that enfinium, I'm trying to lead the way. I'm ambitious, and to understand and to be intelligent of carbon capture, you've got to play with it. You've got to know it. I'm an engineer, so we've worked with HZI, which is a large energy from waste construction company, and they're building our £500 million plant in Leeds. They've built us a pilot carbon capture plant, and it arrived about 4 weeks ago. It's in commissioning right now at Ferrybridge. David, you should come and see it. You will be so excited. In fact, come and see the energy from waste. We'll take you around. I'll show you the big ambition at Ferrybridge, and you'll see this nice containerized pilot plant.
It would be a pleasure. It will be a pleasure, Mike.
Now on that, why a pilot plant? What is the value? Well, the value is understanding the solvent technology. There's only one main proven technology in the world which is scalable at the moment, and it's called amine. And we've got to understand how that solvent reacts with the flue gas of energy from waste. So this is the first of its kind in the UK on an energy from waste plant, and we will trial 2 or 3 amines in the next 12 months, and obviously understand how it reacts and what are the best amines that can be used to scale up into a big scale plant, and ideally working with a company like HZI to scale up at Parc Adfer or Ferrybridge or wherever we're looking. That will be the next step. So that's something that I'm calling it being carbon capture intelligent, and that's what I'm asking my team to do. I want us to be an intelligent understander, business developer, and ultimately operator of carbon capture. We're also looking at other carbon capture technologies, because it won't be the only one in the world by 2030 or 2035 that will be out there. So we are looking at others. I want to pilot others. It's important that we support industry to do that as well, because it's hard for these development concepts to scale up. So if we can work with 1 or 2 pilot schemes in addition to the amine, then I'm very keen to do so. And then the other bit that's I guess an exciting bit for enfinium, and we are the first again. I like being first. Actually, first, second, third. If I'm in the game, I can run the race. But so just being in the race is important. But we're looking at, or we've got something called carbon 14 monitoring. It's a monitor which actually it collects a sample of the flue gas over a period of time, and then that goes to a lab, and it tells you how much of the carbon, the CO2, was biogenic and how much was fossil. And that's a very, very important part of, ultimately, we will want to trade the carbon removal. So you've got to prove by clear, not just by definition, but by the full MRV process that we know exactly this month that it was 51% at our plant at Maudsly. So we've been monitoring for a year, and we're putting these carbon 14 facilities onto all our flue gas and all our plants so that we can understand more clearly what our CO2 biogenic content emission is.
I'll have to take you up on that ferry bridge offer
Yeah.
to visit. So thank you. I will. But there's a really, I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot of, as you always say, firsts, but within what's possible, essentially, you're moving a lot of things forward. You're getting involved with the government's framework as to how they want to see some of this move forward. You're investing in pilots, etc., to make sure the technology is right for you, etc. So, I mean, that's a clear indicator of how serious you are about this, as well as your vision, of course. As we discussed, I think before we started recording, and we were just sort of saying hi to each other. You know, I'm not an engineer myself, and I often think about the commercials of some of these things as well, Mike's, and you've dropped a few different things in there, which highlighted, well, hang on, how are we going to make this work? Part of it's going to come down to the commercial aspect, right? And you said I need to use up a third of my space to do this. I need to invest 1.7 billion. I need to give up a third of my energy that I could sell, in theory, to somebody else, etc. So there's a lot of things that you're having to do to make this work. And, you know, waste is not part of the EU ETS, as you said. The government framework hasn't been, well, it has sort of been finalized for track 1 in some respects, but you obviously need to win to bid into that. You need to figure out how much you can trade in terms of those negative emissions, essentially that removal that you're doing, etc. Is that a balancing act here of, we've got a plan, we've got a vision, we know what it kind of takes, but we do still need some of these other, call it regulatory pieces, essentially, to fall into place for that business model to fully function, for us to be able to commit to it? Because, of course, you're a business. It has to make sense for you as well. Is that fair, Mike?
It is fair, and it is a juggling act and a balance. The part that's important for us, and again within the team, is I'm saying let's be intelligent about how we juggle, how that balance looks, because it is complicated. But then the exciting part of the complication is it hasn't been done before. So we are pioneering the world. This is an industrial revolution that's never happened before. So we can't just go, well, that's how it will be. So it's important that we work out internally in our minds, in our team, and I've got a great team around, a very small team in enfinium, but a great intelligence building team, where we're out thinking of, so how does a carbon removal work? How do you sell a carbon removal? How does the ETS come in? You know, the ETS, the emissions trading scheme, it will come into the waste sector. How is it going to come in? Because it means the customers, the people creating the waste, eventually it's a tax for me at home in my dustbin, and it's going to cost me something. And if this ETS, we believe and we know at the moment it's quite a low number, the carbon tax at the moment in the UK, around the 40 pound, 45 pound type of number, but it was 80 plus, and we know the reasons why it was brought down for good energy purposes and electricity bills. But it will go up. It will go back to its normal levels, and the normal level is assumed that by 2028 it will be £100. By 2030 it could be £150. By 2035, £250. Now this is a tax that's going on our dustbins or anybody's waste out there. So I see it as, well, how can I create the solution for the problem in the future? People don't even know there's a problem, and I can see that that's on its way. So let's make the energy from waste sector be a solution provider of some of these things. So we're working with, again, DESNES on the ETS and how that system would work. We're working internally and with others on how the carbon removals work, because that would be a saleable product for us. On the principle of everything, to sell something, it needs to be ratified and verified, and it needs to be a sustainable product, because there's a lot of greenwashing out there that doesn't work and doesn't help. And I'm not a greenwasher. I'm an engineer that I want to create solid solutions for the future, and I believe in this. So if we're working on all these independently, then we're saying, right, so how do they all come together to become the commercialized solution? Yes. The bits that we then need to be working with government on are those policies, but they don't know what these policies are because they've never written them before neither. So this is how we're trying to help that thinking, and it is a massive think tank to get there. In the process of getting there, if we're paralleling up the, let's call it the government support system, which is the infrastructure is being built or will be built on the east and west clusters, and hopefully maybe in Scotland and ideally down the south as well. These clusters will be set. So that means there'll be pipelines that we can connect to, and that there'll be sequestration systems in the North Sea, Irish Sea, where we can store this CO2 forever. I've got to believe that other things will happen. Can't change everything, but what we can say is if those are happening, we need to be ready, fit for purpose, have all these other juggling balls, spinning plates all nicely aligned, and worked with the government. And another area is for instance, the Environment Agency. So to build any of these plants, you need an environmental license, and for us to have a pilot plant and for us to test amines. The point being is that this is not my secret. This is something where enfinium wants to be working and sharing that knowledge with the Environment Agency to say how it does work, so that they can learn from this process as well. Get Great Britain great, and we will become the carbon capture storage facility system for the world. You've got to think big, yeah? Shall we think
I like
big?
it. No, I like it. Look, I mean, I love the positivity. A lot of people, when it comes to uncertainty, and which obviously there is lots still in all these new technologies, whether it's carbon capture in hydrogen or other markets that we also spend a lot of thinking about. You can run away from it and hide, or you can kind of be an active part of it and help make it happen. So I do like your positivity around this, Mike, in terms of dealing with it and moving things forward, but also being sensible, obviously, around investments and requiring that framework to be in place so that you can be a leader in that market, but within the framework of what's available to you as well. So
and thing that really is combining the government. They're working very hard on how you bring the ETS into the waste sector. And I'm saying, right, guys, while we're bringing it in, that the commercialization of this process is removal. So when you bring ETS in, bring carbon removals in at the same time. This is what will help businesses commercialize, and we don't need government support then going forward. But if you don't have the carbon removals, we don't have a way to commercialize.
Yeah, no, I understand that absolutely. Okay. Look, I mean, I think I'd like to sort of finish off maybe in terms of just talking about, you started to talk about it there around your sort of vision in generally for energy for waste. I mean, and in the UK and carbon capture and the role of that. You've mentioned it, I think, in part throughout the discussion we've just had. I mean, to me, it seems like essentially, as you said, it's the North Star. It's the one thing, the carbon capture, that Energy for Waste should be doing, and you'd like to see all the different plants in the UK and globally participate in that, because you can maximise the value from what's available. Is it how I interpreted that correctly, or what's your kind of vision for energy from waste and carbon capture?
You've got it absolutely right. And if I try and summarise that, is that the energy from waste sector has more to offer. We're doing a great job already. So the point, the most critical point really is that we want to be a solution provider for the UK's transition to net zero. We don't want to be an obstruction, because if we get forgotten about, we're still emitting CO2, and that CO2 is not enfinium CO2. It's the CO2 that comes from the waste that we society create and industry create. So let's be proactive. Let's create the solution for that. If you recognize that is what we are about, then we also recognize that we're not out there to build more of these plants unnecessarily, that the reduce waste, recycle waste, repurpose waste is all at the front of this. Then recognizing that even in the 2040s, there's going to be about 17 million tons of non-recyclable waste still out there. So how best do we manage this, UK PLC? Enfinium's got a solution with other energy from waste companies out there to do this. Put carbon capture on these facilities, support that to happen. And it was the Oxford Institute that's defined quite clearly that there will be about 8 million tons of carbon removals that can be created from this industry. And the Climate Change Committee have identified that we need about 60 million tons a year. So we're not going to be, it's not going to be the panacea answer. We're not going to deliver everything, but we can start the process with our own non-recycled waste. We can get going. We're already an infrastructure out there. We don't have to build energy from waste plants. They're there. If you can fit carbon capture, we should try to do so. We can be capturing the CO2 and aiming for this 8 million tons of carbon removals and contributing to the UK's target of 60 million. So it has to be done. And then you think, well, how do you do it without carbon capture on EFW? And it becomes extremely difficult. So let's be part of that solution. Let's be at the front foot of that solution. And be a decarbonisation business, as I've said, be a decarbonisation business and a carbon removals business, not just this waste business that's just got one role to play. We can do a lot more. And in that role that we play is wherever possible, we should use our energy effectively and efficiently. Effectively and efficiently means a portion of that needs to go to carbon capture, yes, but there's still 2/3 of that can go elsewhere. So encourage businesses around us to build, for instance. Look for local heat networks. So let's sell our heat out there so that when natural gas isn't being used, that they can use our heat. And we are talking to local companies in both Leeds and Birmingham where we can distribute heat because there's systems out there to do that, and we will build new systems. And I'm also trying to encourage, good industrial demands of electricity, because we call it a private wire, but a private wire, if somebody puts their business at the side of us, like a data center that needs a lot of energy at the moment, and they're trying to build data centers very, very rapidly and fastly. We have a very good combination as far as an interim waste plant. We're a bit like a small nuclear plant, other than that we're using waste, but we're fixed, we're base load, we can run, we're running all the time. That's how it is. A data center needs energy all the time. We need that for AI and such like. So we can contribute to other businesses and almost sister partner up in these. And you never know. Some of these businesses might want to say, well, let's build a carbon capture with you guys because we like your energy, and actually we want your carbon removals as well. So trying to think, advance, what would 2035 look like? Well, I have this great partner that's taking some of our energy that wants to support us in building carbon capture. That's all part of the circular economy, bringing green jobs to the area, bringing technology jobs to the area. And then the bit that I've not talked about, but it's something that I have another vision on is if we have a bit of energy left, we should have some electrolyzers on our sites, and electrolyzers to create hydrogen. So when you create hydrogen, it would be green hydrogen because we're not emitting any CO2 because we've got the carbon capture, and that could go into all the articulated lorries that are bringing the waste in the first place, and or even the trains that are taking the CO2 away if we've got a CO2 on a train system. So it's decarbonised transportation as well with a bit of our electrolytic hydrogen. So let's be a solution to as many things as we can with as much as we can, but and we're here for the long term. Be here for the long term and be part of that community.
Wow. Okay. So a real decarbonisation partner, essentially, for many things, because what you're describing there is multiple ways that you can achieve decarbonisation, not just of yourself but others as well. Which requires others to want to be decarbonised, which I think they're now being incentivized to do so. But that's a really benefit. And you mentioned local as well, and I think that's a really important one. One of the other reasons I asked you about where your plants are located is they're not in central London and supporting the communities there. They're supporting it in different parts of the UK all around, and you can provide local decarbonisation benefits to different locations in the UK as well, which is important. So fascinating. Okay. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate your time. I have to say, that was a very positive story to tell around decarbonisation. You know, a lot of times we get caught up in the difficulty, the complexity, and of course it's all there, and that's part of the challenge and the opportunity. But I really appreciate you sort of sharing your thoughts on, you know, the role that energy from waste can play and that Enfinium is playing at the moment. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And it is difficult. I might make it sound simple, but if you make it sound simple, you can work at these things. I lived in the Middle East for a long time, and if you've seen the world's tallest building built on sand, and when you're up there in the Burj Khalifa, looking down at every other building, thinking, phenomenal, this is phenomenal. And why did they build it? Well, they built it because they could.
Yeah.
And if you build the world's tallest building that's at least 3 times higher than any other skyscraper around, we can do a lot here. We can put CO2 pipelines. That's not that big a problem. We've already got the pipelines to sequestration because we've been bringing, you know, natural gas into. It's almost the inverse of natural gas going into the UK economy. Is CO2 going out? So I really do believe in that we have engineering solutions for everything here. You've just got to think a bit harder sometimes as some of them, and then obviously it's the commercialization which is key. Nothing easy at all, but I wake up every morning thinking I can do, and my glass is 7/8 full. So come to Ferrybridge and you'll see the vision in reality, and then you'll see it grow as well.
I look forward to it, and I wish you the best of luck also in the process with Desnest as well, and I'm hopefully looking forward to a nice positive outcome from that as well, Mike. So much appreciated. All right.
Great. Thank you, David.
Thanks everyone as well, and thanks everyone else for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure you subscribe, give us a good rating, and share with your friends. Talk to you next time.